Formerly known as James Madison, big, brawny, and masculine.
Just kidding, he was 5'4".
The co-founder of the Democratic-Republican Party, it is clear he didn't want a monarchy, committed to a free government and independence instead of a complete dependence
on Britain. Episcopalian, Anglican, successor of the Church of England. Without him, we may not even have American land. Favored state rights and opposed the National Bank, cemented the already abolished aristocratic ranks, owned slaves, and supported the idea of a strong government institution, a powerful nationalist who made the proposition as the father of the Constitution.
We, the people of the United States.
By studying world governments, he came to the conclusion America needed a new and strong government union. At the Philadelphia Constitutional Convention, he yearned for a new constitution. Nobody can match James Madison's status.
Checks and balances were his main priority.
Representative of his beliefs, he stated,
all men having power ought to be distrusted to a certain degree.
Fear of oppression was a common practice,
hoping to protect state rights as individual rights.
Nobody wanted someone to have too much authority.
The Virginia Plan at the Constitutional Convention was his ideal vision. The plan by our man James Madison favored large states.
Madison desired a unicameral legislation based off population representation.
Legislature was made by the Connecticut Compromise, the Great Compromise.
House of Representatives and Senate for the American nation, a bicameral legislation the delegates revised. Madison owned over 100 slaves, thought it was necessary to hold them for profit. The Three-Fifths Compromise, suggested by James Madison, solved the problem of slave representation and taxation.
In government, James Madison presented the idea of a 5-to-3 ratio. Slaves were not illustrated in the light of freedom, something in which they would disagree.
The Federalist Papers were written by...
Now let's talk about our beloved Federal Papers, where James Madison the Constitution he favors.
It's all well and done that the Constitution was drafted, but now they ought to accept it. Ratification, confirmation, approval. States must sign and commit.
About 85 documents Madison was doing some writing business, and known 29 were written by James spreading his wiseness. His writings led to New York City being our national capital
in 1787.
Based off his work, Philadelphia, Princeton, Annapolis, and Trenton, then joining before NYC, is understandable.
The new cities were then combinational, with his delegate friends Alexander Hamilton and John Jay. It was published in a neat little book, the Federalist Papers, where they could convey, with propaganda and logical argument, he shared the values and virtues of republicanism. In Federalist No. 10, he displays his case for the majority as they commercially expanded across the states. More representation in the House protects every state without a doubt.
In Federalist No. 39, Madison speaks,
but not in the form of a quote.
3 branches of government are necessary to keep power in the U.S. centuries, based on the people, by the people, who own the authority of the once American colonies. With his papers and a couple others, he convinced Delaware, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania to join the U.S. nation.
I'm just a bill.
Here we go, another issue. Let's talk about the amendments issued, elected into the new House of Representatives. He writes, his creations and writings in the Bill of Rights were tight.
Of the amendments, he drafted parts for the final 10 amendments. Some were chosen, protecting individual rights such as freedom of speech and religion, and hoping to protect the rights of the individual states, clearly influenced by the Enlightenment Revolution.
Then he introduced the amendments to the Congress. Enforced on September 25, 1791, the government was at its strongest, by successfully gaining the unity of the 9 states to approve the Constitution.
With his persuasion, finally joined Virginia, and along came New York, North Carolina, and Rhode Island.
Now back to James Madison. Let's talk about all the hopes and dreams that were crushed in the making of the Bill of Rights. Poor James Madison. These are some things he desired for the Bill of Rights, but did not happen.
To ensure that the people's wishes were met, he wanted to increase individual state representation with the growing population and prevent an oligarchy.
Secondly, he proposed that Congress should be forbidden to give themselves a pay raise to prevent the imbalance of powers. Now we're at the end of the wrap. Thanks for putting on your thinking cap. To restate what we said previously so you don't have to watch this video tediously, Democratic-Republican Party, he had his own political army, was committed to a free government, favored states' rights, and opposed the National Bank, wanted a self-government.
At the Philadelphia Constitutional Convention, checks and balances solved with the Connecticut Compromise, slave taxation and representation by the Three-Fifths Compromise. Wrote the Federalist Papers to convince states to ratify the Constitution he advocates. Not all states agreed at first, so he drafted the Bill of Rights. To this day, we have our Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
All thanks to our founding father, James Madison.